Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something genuinely fascinating. It's a 2,500-year-old Buddhist text that honestly offers a complete masterclass in what you could call radical contentment. You know, in our modern world, we are just constantly bombarded with messages about what we absolutely need to buy or achieve or acquire just to be happy, right? But what happens when we strip absolutely all of that away? We're going to explore a discourse from the Aṅguttara Nikāya that totally challenges our modern assumptions about comfort, survival, and peace of mind. We're looking at the literal bedrock of human necessity.
So really think about it for a second. What do you truly need to survive? Like, if you had to pack a bag right this second and just leave everything behind, what goes in it? Our modern minds pretty much immediately jump to things like our smartphones, a comfy mattress, climate control, a fully stocked fridge, maybe even a solid Wi-Fi connection. And we actually experience genuine daily distress when we don't have these comforts. But as we'll see, ancient wisdom suggests that our baseline for survival, and more importantly, our baseline for contentment, is just fundamentally entirely different.
To really wrap our heads around this, we're looking directly at a text called the Santuṭṭhi Sutta that roughly translates to the Discourse on Contentment. It's a pretty short, but incredibly profound discourse from the Aṅguttara Nikāya. It's specifically designated as AN 4.27, and for this we're using the translation by the esteemed scholar Bhikkhu Bodhi. Grounding ourselves in this specific text is super important because it gives us this direct, completely unfiltered window into early Buddhist monastic philosophy. I mean, this isn't some trendy modern take on minimalism. This is the original ancient blueprint. Now, before we get into what the text actually says, we kind of need to know who the Buddha is addressing here. He's speaking to bhikkhus. A bhikkhu is a fully ordained Buddhist monastic or monk. We're talking about individuals who have willingly stepped completely away from household life. They've left family, commerce, and all of society's typical comforts to live a life of dedicated asceticism. They're actively seeking ultimate spiritual liberation. And to do that, they have to absolutely radically alter their relationship with the material world. Which brings us to the absolute core of this sutta. The Buddha introduces this concept that he calls the four trifles. Just think about that word for a second. A trifle. It literally means something of little value or importance. The Buddha is about to outline the four absolute bare minimum necessities for human survival, and he's just completely downgrading their importance by calling them mere trifles. So brace yourself, because the contrast with how we live our modern lives is pretty jarring.
Let's just walk through this stark contrast. What do you need for clothing? Well, a modern person naturally thinks of a wardrobe. The ascetic, a rag robe. Literally just discarded scraps of cloth sewn together. Okay, what about food? Instead of a trip to the grocery store, the text specifies a lump of alms food. Basically whatever is placed into your bowl by a layperson. Shelter? Forget a house, or honestly even a tent. The accepted shelter here is the foot of a tree. And finally, medicine. When you're sick, what is the ultimate baseline? Yup, you are reading that correctly. Putrid urine. Historically, fermented cow's urine was actually used as a basic medicinal remedy. It's pretty much the absolute furthest thing you can get from a modern pharmacy.
Just four things. A rag robe, a lump of alms food, the foot of a tree, and putrid urine. Those four items represent the absolute stripped-down bedrock of biological survival for the ancient ascetic. Now, the Buddha isn't necessarily saying monastics can never, ever have slightly better items if they're offered, but he is establishing this extreme baseline. He's saying, look, if you have these four things, your biological survival is completely covered. Absolutely everything beyond this is just a luxury.
And this brilliance leads to a really profound psychological shift, which is just beautifully captured in this quote from the text. It says, "When a bhikkhu is satisfied with what is trifling and easily gained, I say that he has one of the factors of the ascetic life." The absolutely crucial point here is that word satisfied, right? The goal isn't just to sort of grit your teeth and physically endure sleeping at the foot of a tree or wearing a rag robe. The actual goal is to be genuinely satisfied with it. This whole overarching ascetic philosophy dictates that your contentment shouldn't rely on the quality of your possessions at all, but rather on your internal relationship to them.
Now, if you read the sutta carefully, there's this almost hypnotic, rhythmic repetition of two specific descriptors applied to every single one of those four trifles.
Over and over again, the text says the rag robe, the alms food, the tree, the medicine are easily gained and blameless. So let's break down exactly why the Buddha emphasizes these two words so heavily. Because this is where the text brilliantly shifts our focus away from the physical objects themselves and right into the psychology of the human mind.
First up, easily gained. The text is telling us that these trifles require minimal effort to obtain. Think about the constant anxiety of modern consumerism for a second. We stress about paying the mortgage, or affording groceries, or buying the right clothes. We basically spend our entire lives working just to secure these things, don't we? But a discarded rag, a shady spot under a tree, those are effortlessly gained. By accepting these mere trifles as totally sufficient, the ancient monastic completely bypasses the exhaustion, the endless competition, and that profound heavy distress of having to endlessly hustle just to survive.
Blameless. This means the items are morally pure. They carry zero ethical compromises. When you claim a discarded rag or just sit under a wild tree, you aren't exploiting anyone's labor to get it. You aren't harming the environment. Compare that to the modern guilt we so often feel about things like fast fashion or our carbon footprints. There's literally no guilt attached to this ancient mode of survival. Being blameless ensures that the monk's conscience remains totally, perfectly clear, and you just cannot have true internal peace if your mind is weighed down by the moral cost of your possessions.
And this brilliantly illustrates the true purpose behind the text. The extreme physical minimalism, the urine, the rags, that's really just the vehicle. The ultimate freedom isn't just about having fewer things in your closet. It's about achieving a specific, profound state of being, a mind unhindered. To really drive this point home, the Buddha actually transitions in the text from standard prose right into a beautiful poetic verse. Let's actually slow down for a second and read this ancient verse exactly as Bhikkhu Bodhi translated it. When one is content with what is blameless, trifling, and easily gained. Notice the conditions he's setting up here. The contentment has to come first, and it has to be rooted in those highly specific qualities we were just talking about. Items that require no moral compromise whatsoever, and absolutely no stressful effort to acquire.
The verse continues, when one's mind is not distressed because of a lodging, robe, drink, and food. Think about it. How much of our daily mental real estate is completely consumed by distress over lodging, clothing, and food? Rents are sky high. Diets are complicated and stressful. Our social status is completely tied to what we wear. The sutta is explicitly identifying these material desires as the primary source of our mental distress. By radically lowering the baseline to those 4 trifles, that distress just evaporates.
And here is the culminating line of the verse. One is not hindered anywhere. This is the ultimate reward. If you aren't attached to the quality of your shelter, you can comfortably sleep anywhere. If you aren't attached to gourmet food, you can eat anything. When your physical needs are reduced to the absolute bare minimum, the world can no longer hold you hostage. Your mind becomes completely, totally unhindered. You are truly free.
But the sutta concludes with a really vital reminder. These qualities, this unhindered freedom, are acquired by a bhikkhu who is content and heedful. It's not just automatic. You don't just go sit under a tree and instantly achieve enlightenment. It requires being heedful, which implies a careful, active, continuous practice. You have to actively guard your mind against that creeping, constant desire for more. You have to actively practice being satisfied with the trifles.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to kind of bridge this 2,500-year-old text right into your life today. What material attachments are currently hindering your mind? Now look, we may not be ancient Buddhist monks, and we probably aren't going to trade our medicine cabinets for putrid urine or our comfy beds for the root of a tree anytime soon, but the psychology of the Santuṭṭhi Sutta remains piercingly relevant. Where exactly is your mind distressed by what you own, or maybe by what you wish you owned? And what would it feel like to let just a little bit of that go? Think about it.